Hello and welcome to ET MSME Talks, part of the conversations under ET MSME Awards. I'm Miloni Bhatt. In India, there is a huge credit gap when it comes to MSMEs, even though the sector is considered the backbone of the economy, contributing significantly to employment, manufacturing, and exports. Over the last few years, though, MSME financing has evolved. How has that landscape changed, with new players? And what are the opportunities that it presents? And what sort of visible ground impact is there? I have three guests with me to share their views on this, and I'm very happy to welcome Amitabh Saraff, Head Financial Services, SME Business and Supply Chain Finance, IndusInd Bank. Welcome, Amitabh.
Hello, Miloni.
We have with us Chandrakant Salunkhe, Founder and President, SME Chamber of India and Federation of Indian SME Association, Chairman and Managing Director, Macro Group of Companies. Good to have you here, Mr. Salunkhe.
Thank you. Namaste.
Also joining the panel, Mr. Yogesh Gupta, Managing Director, Moda Private Limited, and Regional Chairman, Eastern Region, Federation of Indian Export Organizations. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Mr. Gupta, I'd like to begin with you. As an SMB, what are your challenges when it comes to credit? And especially now that we have an increasing number of players on the lending side in the form of NBFCs, neobanks, and banks which are already there. Which is your preferred route to finance?
Well, definitely banks are one of the favored routes for financing. But when you're talking about MSMEs getting funded by banks, the smaller micro units and the smaller ones, they find it difficult to get funding from the bank because of a lot of hassles to get a loan from bank. Too much of paperwork, long gestation period, collaterals, interest rate negotiations. So when you talk about the micro and the smaller units, they have a problem taking funding from the bank. So education is becoming a very important factor at this point of time so that the bankers can educate how to get the funding. So then they land up taking fund from friends and relatives. And I would say a statistic at the fourth census of MSME, only 5.18% of the units could get funded from banks and NBFC. And only 2.05% are getting funded by friends and relatives. A major 92.77% are with their own funds or whatever resources they have within themselves. So there is a huge gap between funding and getting funded. The education by the funding institution is very, very important, and they have to make it easier for them to get it.
All right. These are interesting points and kind of leads us to the next question, which I have for Mr. Salunkhe. And that is, the formal lending sector, as was pointed out by Yogesh Gupta, that the formal lending sector, which includes banks and NBFCs, caters to less than, 15% of the credit demand from the micro, small and medium enterprises, according to a report on the MSME sector outlook by Blink Invest. And in India, the overall credit gap to MSME sector is 25 trillion rupees, while the overall debt demand by MSMEs in India is 69.3 trillion and growing at a CAGR of 11.5%. Now, the average ticket size has seen a growth, but as Yogesh was pointing out, it remains flat for micro segment.
There are plenty of segments. Particularly in SME sector, there are tiny, micro, small. In small, also larger one. In medium size also larger, medium size. So there are different type of we can say requirements of each and every company and every sectors. Okay, so according to that, if we look at the tiny micro companies, they have a demand on a smaller ticket size. And they are not prepared for taking any type of loans or financial support from the bank because they are not aware about how to prepare. If you talk about a small company, they are around 30% companies are aware about the ecosystem of the banking sector, and somehow the medium-sized companies are having the larger ticket size demand and requirements, particularly for trade finance, working capital, or we can say like term loans or any other type of loans they can manage. The credibility, particularly SME sector, is we can look at the banking perspectives and negative. So we have to create first, the positiveness amongst the banker that SMEs are a potential sector, SMEs are a growth engine of Indian economy, and SMEs are going to fulfill the or accomplish the dream of our honorable Prime Minister to make the India as a largest economy in few years. The point is, there is a huge gap between SMEs and banking sector. There is no proper bridge, but SME Chamber of India and my Federation of Indian SME Associations are working very closely. So finally, I want to say there is an awareness to be created by banks. There is an awareness created by the associations like us. And there is an awareness as well as the education amongst SME sector. Then only we can see that 6.33 crore MSMEs in India, hardly 1 crore 25 lakhs SMEs are banking with the banks, and more than 90% must be enjoying financial facility. So banks are abundant money, but there is no takers. So this is the point we can focus, and we can communicate through this channel also, that our SME sector, there is a bank is ready to give you lending. Only you should prepare for according to the banking expectation. Thank you.
Amitabh, can you quantify IndusInd's exposure to micro, small, and medium enterprises? And while banks and other entities, might be a little more wary in providing bigger loans to micro enterprises, how do you see the situation being remedied? Mr. Salunkhe pointed out that, banks are possibly happy to lend, have the money, but there are gaps.
Yeah, I think both the panelists made very valid points, and I agree to both of them. A, there's a huge space for growing, both for the banks as well as NBFCs in the MSME lending space. B, there is a challenge of understanding the creditworthiness and credibility of the segment, and banks struggle to do that. To me, to the second panelist, it's more about educating the banks first, and then educating the MSE segment. The segment is hungry for money, and they know, and they need to find out ways where to get the money. From IndusInd's perspective, as you know, we have a great focus towards the MSME segment. Today, nearly 1/5 of our book overall is focused to small and medium enterprises. This includes our merchant kirana store lending. This includes our transporter non-fleet, lending, our medium and small lending, as well as a small ticket, GST-based lending. 1/5 of our book, broadly would be MSME book currently. The way I look at it, in future, what will really bring in growth and how banks can really focus and contribute to the segment. Of course, primary being their own book, how they can start understanding how to underwrite, how to do non-financial statement backed assessment, how to do GST based assessment, and start lending to the sector in a more meaningful manner. And as a panelist rightly said, it's in the pecking order. The medium guys get the money fastest, the small the second, and the micro the last, and sometimes never. So really understanding the micro and the small is a bigger challenge than the medium and small. The medium and larger small are not that big a challenge. So by opening their books to both cash flow lending to long-term lending in a meaningful manner is the first contribution banks can do, because they have the balance sheet. Second meaningful way could be co-lending. I think there is a space which banks cannot fill because of their lack of reach, or their lack of alternative methods of assessment, or the lack of last mile connectivity to collection. And that is where you need to work and partner with an NBFC and do co-lending in a big way to really grow and contribute to the MSME space. Third, of course, I feel fintechs can play a great role in terms of helping origination by digital KYC, digital sourcing, scaled sourcing, which banks cannot do, and digital collection. I think fintech over time will play a significant role in the same. And fourth, really, figuring out how banks can create a larger spectrum of product and look at differently rather than just looking at always at the old lens, participate in government programs of OCEN. OCEN itself could add 3 trillion, rupees of lending in the next couple of years. Participate in ONDC in a big way, participate in Make in India in a big way. But for this, banks have to have a larger picture. And the way we are thinking, look at holistic ecosystem financing rather than, simple MSME standard product offerings.
Right. A lot of what you've said has been captured in this report that I quoted earlier, by Blink Invest. And one of the other points that it made is that while quarterly MSME disbursements have grown 2x over the last 2 years, the growth has happened on account of increased penetration in tier 3 and 4 cities and not because of improvement in underwriting mechanism. So it basically indicates that a big chunk of MSMEs is yet to be catered to, something that you referenced. And you also spoke of the fact that, fintechs and NBFCs are all using these innovative scoring techniques, to assess creditworthiness of MSMEs. All of you are using tools to scrape data from GST, for instance, to provide, credit to a broader range of businesses. That's something that we spoke of in our earlier conversation. But, as per the report on the ground, the things are not moving very fast. So again, Amitabh, could you tell us when can we actually expect to see that kind of a tangible shift? And how do you see the use of AI data transforming the lending space?
So, Miloni, I have multiple hats within the bank, apart from SME business. I also manage the supply chain business as well as the financial services business. And I deal very closely with a lot of financial services counterparties, a lot of NBFCs who are focused on MSME, a lot of fintechs who are focused on MSMEs. Sometimes the numbers do not really show the real picture. If you really ask me, there is marked difference in the amount of work which was happening at the ground. In A, the type of reach and connectivity people want to have, B, the type of product people want to have, and C, the understanding of the ecosystem and appreciating that it is a lendable segment, which not that high risk as was perceived earlier, and with lower credit cost, higher returns, and overall it's a very high return on asset business. That's being appreciated now. Most of this appreciation, understanding, and launch of products have happened over the last, few years. And now many of the counterparties in the market are well established and well cleared. And now on the kickoff stage, we will start seeing scale in many of these operations over the next few years. So like if you see, banks have taken nearly 2 decades to come to a level, they can start scaling up their contribution. I see many NBFCs and few fintechs, coming to that space. I see the partnership and co-lending, now having little lesser problem than it had 3 years back. So you will now see sequentially year on year far faster growth and far faster, contribution than it was in the past.
All right.
I think we are at the cusp of, seeing that inflection point at which you'll start seeing growth.
That's good news for businesses. Yogesh, I'd like you to chime in over here. From a policy point of view, how successful do you believe the schemes to boost MSME credit have been? For instance, we had the emergency credit line guarantee scheme. And going forward, what sort of policies do you think the government needs to take to further support MSMEs and NBFCs, who are providing loans to MSMEs?
Well, Miloni, before I answer your question, I would just like to pick up one point, what Amitabh just spoke, that bankers have to find out newer ways of deciding how to lend and how much to lend. And let me tell you one very good way which can work out and they can start brainstorming on that is lending as a multiple of GST paid by a small trader. So that would encourage the small trader to do everything on books, on paper, and he would pay enough GST, and you can do a 4x to 5x funding for those kind of traders. So coming back to your question now, ECLGS has been a good support for MSME during the COVID time, and 16.9% NPA is expected, should have happened because not all business could sustain that pressure of COVID. So I'm saying, but ECLGS was very, very required, without which people would not have been able to survive. So even that 16.9% would have become more than 60% if those kind of supports were not there. But going forward, this ECLGS may not be sufficient enough, and we have to look up newer ways of funding these MSMEs. Now, they are very small new people who are wanting to do some business and all. A cluster-based approach should be thought of, so that a group of firms, group of units can come forward. unite themselves and then approach a lender. It could be an NBFC or a banker. So NBFC can fund a common equipment system, and the banks can give them the working capital. So that is one area. And even the government of India is encouraging an ODOP, one district, one product. So that is where the banker should also tie up with the government, that wherever such trainings which are being given to create those ODOP communities, bankers should be there present and take up this opportunity immediately. Like in our FIEO also, we have been given the task of educating the people to do this ODOP in various districts. So this is one very good opportunity. So I would say that going forward, and there are other ways. Government as a macro policy may not work all the time. They have to really go micro level and come out with policies. So linking funding on GST is one good way of relooking into funding.
All right, Mr. Salunkhe, do you have a viewpoint here? From a policy point of view, how successful do you think schemes like ECLGS have been, and the policies that the government needs to support MSMEs? Yogesh has mentioned a few.
The ECLGS scheme has saved more than 14.6 lakh MSMEs. Okay, during this pandemic. In that, around 2.2 lakh crore improved. Particularly loan accounts up to 2.2 lakh crore is improved because of the ECLGS scheme. And the entire banking sector also saved because their reduction of the NPA ratio is very less now. You look at this last quarter's the growth of banking sector, only except one or two banks, all are grown up very well, mainly because of the NPA reduction by the SME sector. Then more than at least almost 93.8% MSMEs are micro and small categories. So they have also saved by getting this support. And usually we look at the livelihood saved by this MSME sector, it goes more than 7 crore. So that means on the MSME micro and small category sector, around 6.6 to 7 crore people have saved their life, their business, their livelihood. So this is the thing, the scheme has, transformed the MSME sector. And after that, so many SMEs have, started transforming business, started changing the business activity, started adopting the advanced technology, started, improving their quality, started, improving the services, and they have changed the productivity also. They have started changing the product also. So this change happened because of the pandemic and because of the ECLG scheme.
All right. Okay. Amitabh, if you could come in at this point, Yogesh mentioned the NPAs, right? 16.9% of total loan accounts under ECLGS, turned NPAs as of September 2022. And the September 2022 position, according to one report in a newspaper, said that the ECLGS lending indicates that distress continues in the MSME segment. Yogesh also mentioned that these NPAs could have been big, but they're contained at a 17% range. But from your vantage, how are you managing the NPA situation emerging out of MSMEs at IndusInd?
I think, Miloni, there are 2-3 ways to look at it. I think let's go back as to why ECLGS was given, right? There was a pandemic. There were shops, manufacturing entities which were shut. Barring necessities, most of the other industries got badly impacted. There were loan repayments, and there were other, operational expenses which were hitting the SMEs and MSMEs. And government stepped in to support them at that point of time to ensure that we have less losses in the industry, to extend the timeline for them to live and continue their operations. And that really gave the right breathing. And one of the panelists rightly said, give the breathing time them to extend their lifeline and, stay and, be alive for where they are today, right? I don't think anybody expected that to be a spick and span portfolio. And without any haircuts and without any losses. If that was the case, the government guarantee was not needed, right? Banks, NBFCs would have stepped up and given the 20%, 40% support that time. The MSME NPA overall, if you look at the numbers, were anyways ranging out 12.5%. So something which was stepped in a loan top up given in pandemic situation to industries which was stopped having 16% to me really is not a glaring number. So that's the right perspective to look at it. Most part of this will be covered by government, 75% first and 25% at the second stage. So that also should not be an issue, because if its documentation is done properly, that should be covered by government. Larger question for us as a bank, I think if the underwriting is correct, if the collection is correct, I do not see the private banks and good NBFCs having the kind of credit cost as generally spoken in media or generally in public domain. While I cannot share the exact number, but it is a reasonable fraction of what is being spoken about. It's a small fraction of what is being spoken about. I think this industry on an overall should have a guided, credit cost of anywhere between 150 to 250 basis points yearly. And I don't think a good process, good governance, good risk underwriting would yield you higher credit costs. And banks like us manage it pretty well. If you have a diversified set of, products, diversified coverage model, you do it well. I don't think you'll ever be hit by huge credit costs. So that is not something which we need to worry about.
All right. Would you also respond to the ODOC point, that was made by Yogesh? What sort of an opportunity does that present for banks?
I think I will take this as a noting point. Banks like us also should work around that. I would only like to put one point to Yogesh is there is a bit of cluster-based, banking, which was approached and, done for small and medium enterprises by our fellow private banks for long. Okay. It has given good results in certain industries like textiles, auto. It has its own nuances because at times when industries goes bad, say textile in Tirupati, it can hit the bank at one go. It has its own positives because clusters give you, community banking, which is easier to proliferate than, otherwise. What is really working today in the marketplace is enterprise-led, banking, where large enterprises really pick up their ecosystem, approach a bank, and align a bank to lending to that ecosystem, whether it is a large corporate in that ecosystem or a small MSME or the smallest of dealer in that ecosystem, to help them align with banks, get a right term sheet, right pricing, and get the transaction done. That is growing in a very big way in this country. To me, that is the right cluster banking and the right model of cluster banking, not in the old traditional sense, which will grow. And each one of us as, participants to the ecosystem should, help promote and grow it.
All right. Yogesh, you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, I just want to add, he's absolutely right. If the larger companies support the smaller companies who are ancillaries and organizes funds and manages their paperwork, it is definitely a good model. But when I'm coming back to ODOC, here I would like to add that sometimes there are certain facilities which are required as a common facility, and the government is not funding those facilities, but the government can guarantee. So if someone comes up and build up those common facilities and the government guarantees those areas, so the work will be done, the business will grow, and entrepreneurs will be able to do more business at the end of the day. So this is one area which they should get into and start exploring if that can be done.
Okay. Yogesh, I have another question for you. Currently, the time limit for MSMEs to repay credit is about 90 days. And the MSMEs have urged the government to enhance it to 180 days. From your vantage, if you take into account the entire ecosystem, not just, the medium, but also the small and the micro, what sort of a time frame would help MSMEs to better manage their credit payments? And, what are the other challenges, if any, with receiving payments?
Payments, normally when there's a cash credit, so there is no time limit as such for payments to come in 90 days or 180 days. But when you're talking of exports scenario, then yes, time limits are there when packing credit limit is given and all. But a normal business funding where working capital is provided on a revolving CC limit, I don't think there is any such restriction until unless the lender has defaulted on some payments. Then it becomes a little difficult. So declaring them as an NP or an SM1, SM2 category, those should be extended for some time, at least till the effect of the COVID is over, and then it can be restored back.
All right. Mr. Salunkhe, I actually want to go back to the point of the NPAs. As per data, even though micro enterprise segment availed a quarter of the loans disbursed under the ECLGS, their share in overall NPAs was much higher at 93.5% in comparison to 3.2% share of other business enterprises, which is 2.8% of small enterprises and 0.5% of medium units. Now, micro enterprises make about 98-99% of MSMEs and remain micro throughout their life cycle, unable to grow. So this data essentially is showing that 90% of them are struggling to pay up loans. How do you see this picture changing, and what does this bode for India's MSME sector? Mr. Salunkhe.
Two things are there. One is, still micro and tiny businesses are not came on a track. One. Second thing, the cost of raw material, if you look at the cost of raw material for last 1.5 years, it is increasing day by day. Most importantly, the manpower. A skilled manpower is a lack of availability in a rural area and particularly the smaller cities. And most important question, a hurdle for MSME sector is on a supply chain. Because when they are supplying to large corporate or mid corporate or exporters, they are not getting payment in 90 days also. Even though they have a contract for 30 days, 45 days, and they have given assurance from the bank that the companies that they will be providing their receivables on time. But no, two things are there. One, large corporate are not paying on time. Second, MSMEs are not destroying the relationship as a supply chain management because they don't want to lose the customer. They are feeling that, let us have a customer. Why will you lose the customer? Today he is not paying, no problem, next 30 days. But banks are not understanding that. If we cross 90 days, we are become a NPA, the black spot on that entrepreneur or that company immediately put on and the civil report as demolished immediately. So therefore, now the point is so many micro and tiny companies are going to close down in few months. If you look at this March end, as per my knowledge and as per our survey taken by last 1 year, around say 3 lakh companies will be going to close this 31st March because they don't want to continue business. They become an NPA, and the smaller and tiny companies, the NPA, we can say the properties are not sellable in the market. That Mr. Amitabh may be aware about it. Because even though NCLT matter or even though the IBC has brought for the special package for the MSME sector, it is not, followed by the banks and followed by the RPs and followed by the somehow, the middlemen people, those are, having knowledge about the settlement of this NPA. So my suggestion will be to SME sector. See, banks are ready to settle down. Banks are ready to give a hand holding. But only thing is that we do not have a proper connectivity. The MSMEs are not going to proper, person to person and bank to bank or a government officer. Today, one of very experienced banker was sitting in my conference and he said that MSME should come ahead with their problems and hurdles. We are there because we don't want to just only to collect the interest and we don't want to just lend, but we want to give a value addition, hand-holding, support and guidance. I suggest and my message to MSME, take advantage because bankers like your doctor, bankers like your advisor, bankers like your advocate, and bankers like your business growth partner. So I'm sure that bank, and I'm telling every day, even Yogesh, you can also take a note, and Amitabh, without SME, India will not grow. And without bank, SME will not grow.
Right. Everyone is part of the ecosystem and they're equal stakeholders. Therefore, everyone should come together. It's a good message. But Mr. Salunkhe, to your point where you said that as per your survey, 3 lakh MSMEs could possibly shut down. Are a lot. I'm assuming a lot of those are in the micro enterprise segment. And, is this number different or an enhanced number, say, otherwise on an average, as businesses shut down?
See, micro, tiny, small, and medium also. Medium will be less numbers, but medium-sized companies have become a NPA, and they come under this IBC net because of that. And some have gone to NCLT because of that. So therefore, I'm sure that the impact will be big, even though larger impact are coming now for the global recession. The MSMEs are facing problem because they are supplied to exporters, they are supplied to large corporates, and therefore they are facing problem because of the not getting their receivables. Second thing, the cost of raw material is increasing day by day. Third, manpower is not easily available. Even the finance cost is very high nowadays. So these are the points we have to think, and we should go ahead with that.
But the number, Mr. Salunkhe, the 3 lakh number that you quoted, is that an average number when you look at businesses shutting down in the MSME segment, or by how much percentage is this number enhanced by?
See, mostly if you look at the tiny and small, around say 80%. Okay, and small, there are small because most of the small companies become an NPA for the private bank, some cooperative banks, some are from the the PSB banks. So therefore, this will be a big impact on that. And you look at the registration of the companies last 3 months. Those companies are in operation. They have also started registering another company because they want to close down the first company. So last month, you must be seen in I think November, around 17,000 new companies registered. So one side, companies are closing. Second side, the companies are registered. Because if you look at the directorship or look at their SIN number or DIN number, the same people are coming to the new thing.
All right. I want to speak to Amitabh and Yogesh now. Mr. Salunkhe mentioned the global environment and the fact, that India is going to see elevated interest rates and also a high degree of inflation. The RBI's repo rate is up 225 basis points since May 2022. And interest rates will also remain elevated. Interest payments on loans for business and retail consumers have gone up. Now, how do you see credit rates impacting credit offtake and impacting the sector? So, Yogesh, if you could start.
Yeah, so higher interest rate definitely is a deterrent for credit offtake. And bankers also know this, and they also try to come in between. But then when the repo rate goes up and everything goes up, they have no choice but to increase it. But it definitely plays a deterrent to credit offtake, because when you are calculating your cost per unit, any unit, and if the interest rate is very high, it does not work out, because the competition is increasing with the population growth. The competition is also increasing from unit to unit, because now too many people are in the same trade. So the interest rate definitely is a deterrent. When interest rates are going up, the inflation was going up, so interest rate went up. So it will definitely reduce the volume, global trade volume. And no matter what says that India has got its own captive stability, but when exports are concerned, exports are reducing, exports are being hit. So forex currency coming into India comes down, and imports of essentials are still there, which we are buying. So India is not insulated with any of this. If there is an impact globally, macroeconomic problem is there, India will also face a problem. But the only advantage India is that India has got its own population, consumption is there. So we will not be impacted as much as the other countries are now going to face. And if recession comes in, which is very well within our reach and we can see it, it's going to be a tough time, even in India.
So you're basically saying that, domestic demand will continue to power the growth as far as India is concerned. But how are you prepping as far as your own business goes, Yogesh? When you look at the macroeconomic scenario.
We are majorly into exports, so we are definitely worried about what is happening globally and in the global market. So recession is around the corner.
All right, and this is actually my last question to you. Amitabh, which are some of the white spaces, that exist when it comes to bridging the existing gaps of credit, to the underserved when it comes to the MSMEs, models that could be successful, models that could evolve in terms of, rural areas or urban areas, where do you see the opportunities finally emerging from?
Yeah, I think there are lots and many initiatives, which will play a significant role in increasing the credit to the MSME space. Okay, I think banks and other lenders are becoming very, cognizant of the fact that payment-based, QR code-based trails which are being created in the digital ecosystem or GST-based trails which are getting created in the ecosystem are great surrogates to financial statements, a great surrogate to income tax statements, and they are really helping lenders to lend 3x 4x of the velocity which is routed through this payment ecosystem. That really will help merchants, small traders who getting formalized into the economy through the GST trail, who are getting formalized into the economy through the UPI trail, to borrow. We are not realizing, but every time you pay a small, a kirana shop by UPI, you are actually creating a formal trail for him of his throughputs and of his turnover, right? To me, that will be a great support to the ecosystem. The entire startup ecosystem, which is getting generated, whether it is a Flipkart or Amazon or a small Zomato, Swiggy, they are connecting a lot of MSME. Even a small cloud kitchen, a small roadside stall is supplying through Swiggy to you, right? He's no more only dependent on cash which comes to him. That's a great trail and a great data which is getting created for lenders to leverage upon it and lend to them in future. There is a plan by government to bring all this startups and ecosystem into one platform, where you'll be a single platform, plugging in all the aggregators. That could give you huge plug-in point for lenders to enter and lend into that space. We spoke about Oken in this platform. Oken would be a great support to the ecosystem. I think this enterprise-based lending, data analytics, which comes out of enterprises, today you can pull out so much data from SAP of a large corporate and analyze on, payment histories of, corporate to vendor, the history of how the vendor has performed, to a dealer, how a dealer has, performed, how has been his payment track record, what has been his velocity of sales, and lending basis that, which is a small industry in India today of $20-25 billion. It could proliferate very hugely in future because India is also warming up to a supply chain ecosystem financing, and banks are also warming up to it because transactional short-term lending. If you look at apart from payments, the other space which has really got disrupted in banking is supply chain financing, and large amount of fintechs have come into that space and helping banks to grow from where they are today. Apart from this, normal things which are being spoken about, multiple panels, multiple seminars, co-lending, fintech leverage, banks lending to NBFCs to onward lend, banks' own book on MSMEs. I think there is huge space for each of these areas. They are too small today, and they will play their own meaningful role over the next few years to fill in the gap which is there today.
All right, Amitabh, thank you very much again for last comments from Yogesh.
Bringing them to a platform, and the farmers are getting the benefit, and even these new generation are getting the benefit. So this synergy is going to grow at a much faster pace in years to come, and you will see things will get better and better. So I don't see any problem as such, except these world recessionary issues and other macro level this thing. But the growth wheel is going to drive pretty faster henceforth.
All right, and your views on exports, because you were speaking with us and then you got dropped off the call.
Yeah, as far as I said, that the export market is definitely getting difficult. 2023, almost all sectors are worried. Merchandise, especially, even the services sector, the IT industry is not too optimistic. So, what good is happening now is that because of the PLI scheme, there is a lot of industries coming into India, and Make in India is happening. So those sectors are adding to our export volumes, and this is one good signal because this PLI has helped companies like electronics. They have doing much better in India. The volumes have gone up, but the usual merchandise exports is going to have a bad year in 2023.
All right. Okay. Mr. Salunkhe, final comments from you. What is your outlook for the MSME sector in 2023-24?
See, 2023-24 will be very challenging for SME sector because this global recession, if increase, it will be big impact on the exports and particularly manufacturing industry in India. But nevertheless, India is prepared for the local market, and the government is also putting a lot of effort. Coming years, I'm expecting that government should enhance the collateral fee loan up to 15 crore for the medium-sized industries and 10 crore per small, and micro and tiny up to 5. Because if unless until the MSME will not get this collateral fee loan, it depends on because I've started smiling because this should be given on the credibility and credit of the bank companies. I'm not saying that every company should be eligible for a enhancement of the collateral fee. It should be given to the looking at their growth, looking at their unique business plan, and of course their productivity, their quality. Then only MSME sector will strengthen the Indian economy, and definitely India will become a number one country in the world in few years. Thank you.
All right. Amitabh, do you want to respond to that?
No, I think I agree to him. I think as we evolve, as banks understand, lenders understand this space, I think collateral is a very small part of the whole assessment. It's really the underlying business and the cash flows which govern the bank's decision-making as to lend or not to lend. To me, banks cannot run a lab product for this segment beyond a certain point. So it has to be cash flow based. It has to be by understanding of the requirement. So I agree with the gentleman that collateral cannot be the only factor. If enhancement is needed, it is needed for the business to grow.
All right. With that, we are at an end. Thank you so very much, gentlemen, for sharing your thoughts on the issue, on the evolving spaces when it comes to MSME lending. Thank you very much for being here, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All the best to you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you very much.